and welcome back to another episode of Modular Nerds. I'm Mimir.
And I'm Lennex.
So, you got a couple things that you want to start off with today, Lennox?
Yes, I do. First off, want to go ahead and say thanks to the folks who listened to the last show that we did. We got a couple subscribers and people who complimented us, and more than just people we know in real life too. So, I'm pretty pleased about that. I'm glad that the show garnered a little bit of interest from people just scrolling through YouTube. We hope that doing the podcast live will attract maybe some more fans in the future. Also, real quick, I wanted to plug our merch store. Links will be in the description, and we'll also be throwing them up in the, I believe, somewhere in the comments. But yeah, the merch store is pretty good right now. Mimir worked his butt off to go ahead and put that stuff up there, and I'll tell you right now, that merch is looking sweet. He's got the distressed dad hat that he got for himself with his own logo on it.
Yeah.
My logo is currently not on it, but that's what happens when you make the merch store. You get to put your logo out first. So he did a good job. I'll give him that. And of course, he put just his logo up first. But
well, thank you. We'll
we'll
get yours up there.
We'll be correcting that mistake soon, is what he means to say. Yeah, because y'all want to see my logo. Yeah, I got a nice little logo I'm going to put up there for you guys too. But yeah, no, check out the merch store. We got all kinds of cool stuff. I personally am in need of a set of flip-flops because no way am I walking across a gym floor in my bare feet. Made that mistake once before, never again. So I'm definitely getting some flip-flops, probably a t-shirt and a hat, and I'm not going to lie, with some of the notebook ideas we got are also looking pretty good. So yeah, check out our merch store. And also, in the future, if anyone is interested in us revisiting a topic, like if you guys want me to revisit a certain Warhammer topic and bore the crap out of Mimir with it, just go ahead and let us know. I would love to bore Mimir again. It was a good time, and I just apparently I'm falling in love with the sound of my voice. But on that note, Mimir, what are we doing today?
Well, today we have kind of a hot button topic here. A lot of people like to go back and forth on this topic. We're doing the great Skyrim debate. Imperials versus Stormcloaks. So
yes,
we're gonna start it off with kind of introducing our sides on each part of it, and then we'll kind of like go down our notes and kind of do like a back and forth, little bit of like debate style. Maybe not so much debate, maybe a little bit more just conversation about it. But I think do you want to go ahead and give your first stance, and I can follow up after that?
sure thing. So also, just to preface this a little bit, so we're gonna try and keep this respectful, even though I expect it's gonna get a little bit heated. We're revisiting this because it's a conversation we've had in real life. We're actually both so excited for it. We actually do have notes, both of us.
Yeah.
I've got a sheet right in front of me, and I know Mimir was scratching some off, and telling me it's like, I got notes. You're not going to be prepared for me. Well, I got notes too, Mimir. So let's go.
Alrighty, go ahead and present your side of it. Your intro. Who do you think is the better choice here?
I don't even think it's that complicated. I think the Empire is the choice to go with, and I know some of you are going to be going for the Stormcloaks because you love the story of the rebellion. You love the story of fighting for freedom and the Viking culture. And Ulfric, I'm not gonna lie, he has some awesome speeches, but at the same time, you got to look at the bigger picture here. You got to consider some details. Ulfric and the Stormcloaks are in the wrong. I understand why you pick them, but they're in the wrong. The Empire is the way to go.
All right. Well, I mean, clearly that shows that I'm on the Stormcloak side, and I think having Skyrim be free from like the clutches of the Empire, like, come on, that feels so right. It's let them be them. But I kind of want to start off by saying that yes, there may be some topics in here that are quote unquote sensitive. So if if that's kind of an issue with you, you know, like, just let it be known that it's a video game, guys. Like, it works different than it does in the real world. So, if something bothers you about, like, one side versus the other, we're not trying to get, like, actually political here, okay? Like I said,
it's fun to talk about.
yeah, it's a video game. So, go ahead and get yours rolling here, and
Okay, well, right off the bat, I'm going to go ahead and I'll lead with one thing that a lot of people are going to say. Well, Lennex, what about at the beginning of the game? You're about to get executed by the Empire. Why would you want to join them? Okay, and I'm not going to lie, that part, it does suck. I fully acknowledge that. Your guy got swept up in an operation where basically the objective was to capture Ulfric Stormcloak and put an end to the rebellion. It sucks the fact that the legate who's standing there is basically saying, I don't care who this is, he was with Ulfric when we captured him, or he was nearby at least. Take him out. That does suck, I'm not going to lie. But the fact of the matter is that we are about to see the Empire win. Like they're winning here. There's the aspect of, first off, yeah, you always want to be on the side of the winning team. There's also the fact of the matter that the General Tullius is hauling ass to make sure Ulfric gets executed in a hurry here, because Ulfric is a hugely contentious figure in Skyrim, and he knows that as soon as Ulfric is gone, he basically paves the way to an Imperial victory in the little civil war they got going. So he needs Ulfric dead, and to demonstrate how serious this is, actually, no, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. I'm gonna hold on to that. I'm gonna keep that one in my back pocket for now. But yeah, the point here is that we're about to see an Imperial victory, about to see Tullius put an end to the rebellion, right up until the point a fucking dragon shows up from the sky, and all is lost.
Well, I think to understand Ulfric's point of view as to why he is the way he is, you gotta go back. You gotta go back to how things kind of started with him. Like, he was like, hold on. Let me search through here, just make sure I'm getting names and things right. So, because Ulfric comes from nobility, yeah, you might be able to have like some type of say saying that, okay, well, maybe he didn't grow up like most people in Skyrim, but that doesn't make him any less of like a patriot. And actually, at one point, when the Empire really needed some help, Ulfric went and fought for the Empire. Ulfric was not always against the Empire. Ulfric kind of got screwed over by the Empire, which kind of led to him saying, okay, well, now we just need to do things our own way.
I can understand that being the point of view. Look, Ulfric, I'm gonna also go back in time with you here. Ulfric grew up the son of the Jarl, and he was he was a pretty cool guy by his backstory. I'll give you that. He spent a decade studying with the Greybeards. It's where he learned the Thu'um and learned to use the power of the voice. After he did that, he saw the suffering of his people when they were going to war against the Thalmor, and he decided he was going to leave High Hrothgar and go join them in battle. And he fought hard in the war, and he got pretty fucked up by it. There's no way to look around that. But I think the real thing we need to look at here is that war did mess him up, like bad. Like, he makes repeated mentions as to how terrible things were and how bad things were. And I think that there's an argument to be made that he is classifying, or his entire life is consumed by his conflict. That he doesn't have a way out of it, and that all he knows is to keep fighting. He, like, even when you ask him why he's fighting, he's mentioning the war. It's like, it has to be for something. It has to be for something. Like he talks about all the men he saw die, and talking about how when he returned to Skyrim, he saw familiar faces as strangers, because hinting that he didn't really have a connection with these people anymore, his people. And so, like, the war left its scars on him, which, fair enough, it does for just about everybody. It's war. but when you're in a position to make these kinds of changes to affect these kinds of changes in the world, you have to be more careful than declaring yourself the new High King.
Yeah, but see, when this kind of like all started, he was not opposed to the Empire, like I said before, and then he really got fucked over, like pretty bad. Like he was tortured by the Aldmir Dominion. He was lied to by the Empire, and they broke promises for him, and he was not having it. That was enough was enough, and he said, you know what, like if you guys are going to continue to treat me and my people this way, like there's a lot of other things that we'll kind of get into, but he definitely was like, you know what, if you guys are gonna treat my people this way, like we're gonna handle this on our own. We don't need you to sit here and kind of push us forward because of how you want us to be, and this is how you think we should handle the situation. They said, enough is enough. Like, we've seen how you've handled these situations so far, and you've been giving too much, and now it's time for us to take things back.
Well, all right. So just because you're alluding to it, I'm gonna go out flat out and say it. The White Gold Concordat. For the people who are listening who don't know, the White Gold Concordat was the treaty that sort of ended the Great War. After the Empire was basically getting its ass handed to them, but they then achieved a major victory at the last minute at I think it was the Battle of Red Ring. It crippled their army, killed their greatest general, and the Thalmor were like, "Damn it, we get time. We gotta get away from this and consolidate our forces again." So the White Gold Concordat was signed. There were 3 major stipulations with the Concordat, and it was let's see. Talos worship was going to get banned from the Empire, which is a big thing with Ulfric, and what he says, like, oh, the Empire is bad because they banned Talos worship. For those of you who don't know, Talos is the big humanities champion, Tiber Septim, who is said to have ascended into godhood and gets worshipped. That has a different meaning in the Elder Scrolls universe, where you could actually make an argument that, because godlike beings are real, their worship does make them more powerful. So it's seen as a weakening of humanity. There's also, let's see, the Blades were to be disbanded, which were a huge anti-Thalmor group. They were also the Guardians of the Emperor. Then also, I think it was a large portion of Southern Hammerfell was going to be handed over. The territory concession for Southern Hammerfell, which would go over to the Dominion. Yeah. I'll give you this. That doesn't sound great, but it's also not nearly as bad as it could have been, considering everything else.
Well, okay. So if we're getting a little bit into the Hammerfell stuff, Hammerfell, like, they were attacked by the Dominion, and I believe it was General Decinius. Maybe I'm saying that right. I'm not 100% sure. He was ordered to march to Cyrodiil instead of taking back. And I know I'm going to be butchering a lot of these names. Skaven? I'm guessing that's how you say that one.
Piece of territory in Hammerfell.
Yeah, it was like one of the big cities. I don't know if that was the capital. I don't remember 100%. But they were told basically abandon that and come save us here in Cyrodiil. And Decinius was like, I'm not doing that. Like, this is our home. So, but I understand that you guys need help. So he sent some troops to go help Cyrodiil. And that's when they took back over the Imperial city, and the White Gold Concord was signed. A lot of the Red Guards, like, they didn't agree with the treaty, and they wanted to take back Hammerfell. That's their homeland, like, they can't just give it up, because all of a sudden this treaty was like, oh yeah, we're gonna ban this, and you guys can keep that land, and we'll have our people kind of come live here now. Like, we'll have they're like a, I guess, territory of the Empire. So they're like, well, we'll just have them come live here, or the ones that are already down there, you guys can just rule them. And like the Red Guards felt betrayed, so they renounced from the Empire, and they seen all that like as like a huge betrayal and everything, that they would even be considered to just be let go like that by the Empire. And like the Red Guards, they fought the Dominion to a standstill, forcing the Dominion to withdraw from Hammerfell. Like they themselves were able to retake their own homeland, or at least a big part of it. And once they got to that point, they were like, you know what, we're gonna be independent. We're not going to side with the Empire. We're not going to continue to be ruled by the Dominion now, since they kind of tried taking over and everything. Like they got to the point where they were like, we're going to be independent with ourselves, and we're going to handle things our own way, because screw you guys for basically just giving us up.
I can acknowledge the fact that Hammerfell got the short end of the stick here. They didn't do well in the war. Much of their territory was actually devastated during the war, because that's where a lot of fighting took place. It's why when the Empire was making terms, they're like, yeah, sure, you can have the southern portion of Hammerfell. It's basically a wasteland at this point anyway. I mean, it makes sense from a larger point of view. You got to try and understand what the Empire's view here. Humanity as a whole is under serious threat. Yeah. We're under massive threat from the Thalmor and the High Elves in general. They're a political extremist faction of the Alphamary Dominion that came to power, and their goal is basically to either subjugate, conquer, or just enslave or wipe out humanity, the races of men. Like these are the bad guys. Their stated objective is to do bad shit. I'm not saying every elf is looking to destroy humanity, but the faction in power is definitely prioritizing it. They want the Empire gone. That's why a lot of their military operations are settled at like trying to just fracture humanity, break up the power blocks, and make them weaker. They love the idea that the Red Guards decided to just secede Hammerfell from the rest of the Empire, because to them it's like, hey, great, the humans are fighting each other now, or even if they're at least not standing together. It's why also they love the idea of the Skyrim Civil War, because they're like, oh, great, more humans fighting humans. We love that. It's fantastic to us. And I should also point out that part of the reason we know this is because when you're playing the game, you can recover documents inside the Thalmor Embassy, which even say, hey, this war is going great for us. We love the fact that that Ulfric is fighting. We want to keep this going as long as possible. An Imperial victory is the worst outcome for us. A Stormcloak victory isn't great, but it's still better than the Empire winning again. So we just want this war to keep going, and to do that, they're even supplying arms and another shit to the Stormcloaks rebellion to keep them going. They're stirring stuff up. They know that the Stormcloaks are ultimately hurting the Empire, which is great for them, because sooner or later they're going to kick that war off again. Like, both sides know it. A lot of this is just panhandling. Like, they're just they're making nice. They're smiling. They're waving at each other, but they know for a fact this war is going to kick off again.
Yeah, well, the part of the whole point of Skyrim wanting to fight, or at least Stormcloaks wanting to fight and drive out the Dominion, was to keep them out of Skyrim itself as a whole. And yeah, they might come back, they might cause all these problems and everything in the future, but they know that if they show their strength, it's less likely for them to come back, at least anytime soon. And don't get me wrong, yeah, peace is a good idea when this big group, because it wasn't just high elves, but this large group is trying to take over the world, basically, and yeah, peace is a good idea. People don't want to have to sit there and have this constant war. Like, war causes so many economical problems, so many like issues with not just like trading and everything like that, but food supplies, and like it hurts the people more than it hurts the governments. So having the Stormcloaks be like, we want to drive them out as like this big force and keep them out. We want to basically hit them so hard that when they stand back up, they think twice about coming back.
Fair idea. I can acknowledge the idea of that, at least is a good one. But the ultimate problem we've got here is the fact that the Thalmor, like, they're also gearing up for this next war. I understand that war is a hardship, and people in Skyrim, they suffered from that war too. Like, Ulfric knows it. I mean, he was like leading the charge for a lot of the Nords. He talks about all the men he saw die, and it was harsh. I think something we also need to acknowledge is that, look, even if Ulfric has somewhat pure motivations, it's like we can't acknowledge that he's all the way pure. Like, he's got some messed up ideas, and I'm not saying that just from like an in-universe type of thing either, where it's like, look, they live in a harsher reality, so they have to accept harsher facts. I'm talking about how, like, even from an out-of-universe perspective, Ulfric is kind of a messed up guy. There's this whole thing where he marched on Markarth, like the incident. This happened after he came back to Skyrim. He goes ahead and he has to march on Markarth to help put down a rebellion that's going on there.
Yeah,
and he does.
The Forsworn comes in and they take over Markarth, and then after Markarth was kind of taken over, it was let's see. I know I had his name in here somewhere. I want to get it right.
I think I got that guy's name too on here. It's the
Halfdir? Yeah.
Yeah.
Halfdir.
Yeah.
So Halfdir was the I think he was the Jarl or whatever of Markarth, or at least he was the guy that was in charge of Markarth.
Yes. He promised Ulfric that if he retook the Reach, it's the Reach is like the territory name. If he retook it, then he would allow free worship of Talos. That was like a condition for Ulfric coming out to help.
Yeah, so when Ulfric and his men stormed and retook Markarth, they basically did kind of like say, okay, that's fine. And there's a little bit of speculation too, as if this is actually true or not. And if it is true, which one of them actually did it. They said that Ulfric killed anyone who helped the Forsworn. That he killed, like him and his men killed shopkeepers and all that. But then there's other sources too that say that it was actually Halfdir who ordered it. That afterwards it was him who was so pissed off that his people would help the Forsworn come and take over the city and everything. So I don't know which one is true. Like I said, there's some people who say that it was Ulfric, but a lot of those people are people who don't like Ulfric. So it's kind of hard to, judge if they're telling the truth, or if they just said, hey, we'll use this and we'll paint him to look like a worse guy.
Okay, I'll give you that. The way that the lore is laid out is that it's up for speculation. Like, we're not 100% sure either way, but we can guess based on what we know.
We know it happened, but we don't know which one did it, or if it really like happened the way that they said it happened. I mean, history is written by the victor, so depending on where you are in Skyrim, or I guess other parts of Tamriel, the story may be passed on a little weird.
Right, different people are going to tell different editions of the story. I get that, and context matters. I'm a big whenever I'm arguing with people, or like when they're describing something, I'm like, well, what's the context for this? You can't say something out of context and expect it to hit the same way as if you know all the details.
Right.
So, okay. So moving on from that though for a second, it's the tail end of that incident that also gets me interested. So when reinforcements from the Empire show up, they go ahead and they demand entry to the city because they hear all the bad stuff going on. Like they're there too to help handle the situation, and they were denied entry into the city right up until the point where they said they would allow the worship of Talos in open, which they acceded to. The commander of the forces was like, I don't want to do that. Like, there's two additions to it, like you said. Either he right away was like, that's fine, or he hesitated. In either case, I think that it's not fair to even put that decision on them in the first place, because they knew that Talos worship being banned, at least openly, was a huge stipulation from the treaty. And if the Thalmor find out about it, that's the Empire breaking the treaty and lets them restart the war right away. Which, you know, they're probably not ready for at this point. Like, they're still pretty fresh out of the war. So, you know, either way, it's like, you know, you're asking me to break international treaty here just so you can, you know, we can go inside and render aid to the town and help the people out. That's messed up. Like, well, and I'll let you go. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I mean, kind of the whole point of, like, or at least one of the major points of the Stormcloaks was basically freedom of religion. You know, like, they didn't want to be told that they couldn't worship Talos. They wanted to be able to have, like, their own free open worship. And for them to even sign in the first place the Concord, like, that really wasn't fair to kind of say, okay, well, it's not necessarily a big religion here in Cyrodiil, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna say, yep, like, we know that's more prevalent in Skyrim, and that's okay. Since you're part of us, Skyrim, you're gonna have to listen to this treaty. Like, sorry guys, you know, you're basically, like, huge religion that I don't know exactly the percentage that it makes up within Skyrim, but I'm going to assume that it's many. I'm going to assume that it's a large percentage.
Statues are everywhere, so that's a fair assumption.
Yeah, so for them to basically say, sorry, sucks for you, and you're just going to have to listen to it because you're part of us. That's not necessarily fair. I mean, they probably should have brought in, like, the High King and tried to form, like, a better deal. I know that some of the speculation too is that the High Kings were basically puppets. That they just kind of went along with the Empire. And you know what?
Yeah, Ulfric said that a couple times. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that they were puppets. I think that some of them probably were a little bit weaker in their hold on Skyrim. They weren't, you know, so, like, patriotic towards Skyrim. I feel like they looked towards the Empire and said, you know what, you guys are our friends, like, we trust you, we're just gonna go ahead and, you know, say, like, okay, even if we don't believe it 100%, you know, like, what you're telling us, like, we're just gonna kind of go along with it. And I think that was one of the big things that Ulfric was scared of happening when he went to Torrig. Like, when Ulfric challenged High King Torrig, I think that was part of the reasoning. And it was like, I don't want to take the chance that you're not going to side with us. I don't want to take the chance that you're just going to run off and do what you got to do, or, you know, basically tell us, like, hey, you guys have to stand down. So I feel like he thinks that he definitely needs to be the one leading and in charge, so he knows for sure that he's not being puppeted.
A lot of that also plays into what Ulfric's mindset was at that time, because some people can argue that's the typical Imperial line that they shout to people in the propaganda, is to just tell them it's like Ulfric murdered the High King so he could seize power. Like, he knew the High King wasn't going to go on along with the plan, and he decided to kill him so that he could then just push forward with his ideals for Skyrim.
And, you know, I think if Ulfric actually went to Torrig and kind of, like, sat him down and said, like, hey, I don't think this is a good idea, I think we need to do things our way. I feel like if Ulfric would have actually, like, made a little bit more of an effort with Torrig, he probably could have persuaded Torrig to stand against the Empire and or maybe even help convince the Empire, like, hey, we're strong, we're gonna leave for now and handle this situation on our own, but we'll be back, because they've been allies in the past.
You'd be hard pressed to convince an empire, hey, we're gonna secede, but it's only for a bit. Trust us, bro. We're not gonna turn our backs on you for good. I don't know if the empire would have gone for that. That sounds like some bullshit.
I
like
mean,
that.
if you okay, so let's say if you were in charge and your best buddy goes, hey, I gotta handle some shit, but I'll be back. I don't want this shit to land on your doorstep, so I'm gonna go take care of it real quick, and we can discuss things afterwards. I feel like I don't know. I kind of feel like they would have been like, okay, I understand, and that saves us and our people, and we can make it look like we didn't know that this was gonna happen. Like, they could have basically faked the Civil War, and just kind of like let them handle their own shit and been like, we didn't know this was gonna happen, and
this plays into politics though, where it's like that, you gotta play the game as it is. Like, love it or hate it, it's the game you got, and so you have to play by certain standards and certain rules, and then backroom dealings and shit like that. Like, to turn a whole country into basically a deniable op or a false flag operation like that, I don't know. Like, the Empire is pretty desperate, but I don't think they're quite at that point, and that's also not how it was actually played out in the game. Like, and also it bears mentioning that I found lore while doing my research that shows that the Jarls were really pissed off because they outlawed Talos worship and they weren't really consulted on it. But then the Empire after the war, even though they had debts and shit to pay off, still sent a couple gold chests out to Skyrim to be like, hey, be quiet about it. The Jarls and the High King accepted them, and like trying to think of a good way to phrase it. It's like it became a transaction. It's not a negotiation. It's a transaction. That basically it's like, look, you're pissed. Here's gold to make you feel better about it. And then the Jarls were like, well, okay. And I can only presume that the Jarls either came to the conclusion on their own, or they managed to reach the point where, or someone even explained to them, like in wink, wink, nudge, nudge kind of way, where it was, hey, look, open Talos worship is banned. Don't worry about it though. I'm sure these things will work themselves out. And really, who's going to know what you're doing in your private time?
Yeah,
who can truly know the thoughts of another?
Yeah, but if they get caught, it's basically punishable by death. So obviously people are going to continue to be afraid.
Who's going to catch them?
When you're walking around Skyrim, you see Thalmor around. When you're walking around Skyrim, I believe there's even, I want to say that there's even like times where you're talking to certain people, if you're wearing that Talos necklace, I think like they say stuff to you or whatever.
Yep.
And it's like people are like, hey, you need to be careful wearing that. So obviously people are afraid. People are afraid to have like their own like beliefs and everything, and that right there, like, that brings down the morality of the entire populace. Like, if people aren't feeling free and like welcome to, I don't want to say do as they please, but like live their own life, then that's kind of a big problem. And that's one of the things that Ulfric just couldn't stand. It was like he wanted his people to be free and no longer feel that oppression from the Empire. Like, they were telling him, basically, like, we understand that this is what you and your followers believe, but like, we signed this piece of paper that says that you can't do that anymore, so you have to listen to us.
Okay, and I will agree with you that is kind of a shit deal, and it does affect the lives of the average person. And I also am a supporter of religious freedom, and Talos worship being banned is shit, because Talos is humanity's champion, and people should be free to worship him if they want to. But it also comes down to another thing. We're going to dial back the clock here a little bit, but after the Markarth incident, exactly as the Imperials were afraid of. The Thalmor heard about that shit. It's like, hey, what the fuck, bro? You said you were going to stop Talos worship. Why is Markarth openly worshiping Talos again? And the Empire had to do some fast talking because they got caught in a treaty violation.
Yeah, well, they
like,
scapegoated Ulfric for it, which was pretty
Ulfric,
fucked. He just
Ulfric
helped.
Was in on it.
Well, no, he helped retake Markarth, and then when they said, "Hey, why is Markarth now openly worshiping Talos?" they said Ulfric did it, and threw him under the bus, and he got arrested for it. And he only got let out because his father died, and he had to go take over. Where was it?
It was Windhelm.
No, Eastmarch. He had to go take over, like, and start like, being in. Is Eastmarch the same as Windhelm? Is that like the area?
No, I think you're talking about a different area. I'm not. Okay. It's been a minute since I've looked at the Skyrim map.
I know that he was the heir to Eastmarch, so I don't know exactly which area that is.
Right, but his father died, and his father was the Jarl of Windhelm.
Okay, so yeah, he had to go take over, and that was pretty much the he had to sneak out a eulogy for his father's funeral. Because he was imprisoned. All because sucks. Like they fucked him over. They told him, like, you're gonna take the fall for this. We're going to let you just take the fall for this.
Yeah. Well, there's more to it than that. And here's the thing. I agree with you. That sucks. He was in jail when his father passed away. Like, life is hitting Ulfric hard with this shit. But here's the thing. He himself is a respected member of the nobility. He was raised on this. Like, he's not just some ignorant peasant who is good at swinging a club or an axe and is then got promoted into nobility. He grew up on this. He knew the rules. He knew that when he went to Markarth that he was directly going in violation of the law of an international treaty. He can't play ignorance. This was like you can't just pretend it's like, oh, I didn't know it was a big deal. It's like, motherfucker, you grew up around this stuff. Well, you knew what this was.
He wasn't really, like, feigning ignorance. He
knew what he was doing, exactly. He knew that it was a violation of the treaty. He just didn't give a shit.
Well, that's because he was trying to push back, and the Empire was still like, no, we can't. Like, you gotta listen to us. Like, we're in charge. We know better than you. Like just we'll handle it in time. Like,
yeah,
yes,
but as a result,
right now, but we'll handle it in time.
But as a result of the Thalmor finding out that the treaty was violated, the Empire had to do some fast talking to prevent the war again, and as a result of that, they had to let the Thalmor walk around Skyrim. And the Thalmor abused that shit. Like you said, they walked around, the Justicars, those dudes in the robes, would walk around, find Talos worshippers, and even though they were supposed to technically bring them in, that's only if they would have gotten caught for it. Most oftentimes, they'll just execute them. Yeah. You walk up to a Talos shrine in Skyrim, the Thalmor will have come by, they'll have executed everyone there, because they waited for, like, worshippers to show up, just fucking butchered them.
Yeah, they tortured and murdered civilians because of their worship.
Yeah, and they had to be, here's the thing, they had to be allowed into Skyrim to do this in the first place because they got caught in a fucking treaty violation. A treaty violation that Ulfric was totally a part of. And so later, when he's bitching about the Thalmor being allowed to wander Skyrim, that's really him bitching about the consequences of his fucking, oh my, if it isn't the consequences of my actions. It's, motherfucker, they're only here because of you.
Yeah, well, the way I see it, I guess, is that for Ulfric, it should never have been an option. Peace was never an option, you know.
Peace was never an option, huh? Okay.
It definitely should have been, like, we need to stand together and stand strong and drive them out. And you basically bending the knee to this other group and giving them what they want right now is not the answer. Like, they were forcing everyone else to bend the knee along with them, saying, guys, this is what we need to do. We have to do this because we are not strong enough, and if we aren't strong enough, then everyone else should bend the knee and like help us recover until we're strong enough, and then we can go at this as a united front. When Hammerfell decided, you know what, we're gonna do this on our own. Skyrim's seen that, Ulfric's seen that, and said, we can do the same thing. Why is it that Hammerfell was able to go and reclaim this and take out one of the top military groups of the Dominion and take out one of their top generals and everything and take back their city? I don't know again if that was the capital of Hammerfell or whatever, but they went and they took this back, and Skyrim said, we can do the same thing. And the Empire was like, no, stand down, we know better than you.
Because that's from the Emperor. The Emperor is the guy with the big picture. The legates, the General Tullius, those guys, they're the ones with the big picture. On the chain of command, it's like, look, we fought in the war. We saw the strategic maps. We know the real deposition of our own forces. We know that we were losing bad, and we signed the White Gold Concordat because we wanted a chance to recuperate, and we're getting ready for the next war. You want to worship Talos again? Give it a few years, man. You want to worship Talos? Just don't yell that shit in front of a high elf, and you're fine.
They wanted to fix themselves and not worry about the oppression of the other areas. So they wanted to rebuild their own troops and everything, and not have to worry about oh, Skyrim's not doing that great, but we're not ready for war, so we're gonna continue to let Skyrim deal with their issues like this. Maybe we'll help out a little bit and kind of keep them barely afloat, and we're going to continue to rebuild our stuff, and we're going to continue to ask that you guys follow our lead and do as we say. That kind of feels it felt like a big overreach. They were definitely hey, we know better than you, so you need to listen to what we're saying. And I don't know, it felt like it was too much. They were trying to push their agenda on Skyrim and Hammerfell when all they wanted to do was to basically keep their homes.
Look, maybe if there was overt signs of Imperial oppression going on, and I know that sounds rich because we just discussed what the Empire was imposing on Skyrim, but we're not seeing that Imperial rule leading to these mass executions of civilians, or all these people getting killed who didn't deserve it, or the Empire showing up and taxing small towns into oblivion. It's people in Skyrim are able to live their lives and do fine. The Jarls have a lot of local authority. They're still the dominant local authority. It's just when the Empire shows up, there's a reason for it, and typically that reason is because there's military power that's needed, and more often than not, they got called for. Like the Markarth incident, where it's hey, we need military support. Time to cash in those chips that we've got, or to call in that marker with the Empire. And the Empire sent troops. It's just that Ulfric got there first because he was closer.
Well, I guess one of the other issues I see. Sorry, hit my mic. One of the other issues I see is basically all the Jarls. Yes, they're in charge of their own areas, but if the Empire decided something that was forced onto the Jarls had to basically do as they were told. So yeah, they may be in charge of the everyday, everything that's going on, but if something was decided, the Empire could just march in and be you need to do this. And that's not freedom. That's just they're allowing you to kind of live your day-to-day life until they don't agree with something that you have to say, and then they'll come in and overstep and say, nope, you have to change this now.
Well, what are the examples of how that existed beforehand? We have to think was the Empire usually just showing up and saying, hey, we don't like that you guys do this here today, we're going to punish you all for it? It's no, this shit came down from on high, and a lot of it's common law. It's just Imperial law. It's like, hey, okay, don't kill each other, don't steal from each other, yada yada. Like people still talk about, the Jarl's justice. Like when you take up contracts and shit to like kill bandits, it's like, for under the dictates of the Jarl of Whiterun, you're requested to terminate these bandits that are, or get rid of these giants that are plaguing the roads. You're doing it for the Jarl. You're serving local authority. Like the Empire doesn't come in with a heavy hand at this point. Like which is honestly a little bit shocking considering the level of threat they're under. You'd think that with the mad scramble and buildup for the next war that's going on, that they would be more heavy-handed. But honestly, overall, they're fairly hands-off when it comes to local matters. General Tullius even only shows up with his legion because he's like, look, shit's getting rough. There's a civil war in Skyrim. I'm showing up to back up the Imperial support. And he does. That's his deal.
I think it was less so of, hey, we're gonna send in Tullius to kind of, bring an end to this rebellion in like a diplomatic way. It was go in, take out this threat to us, and like continue to make sure that everyone's following the laws we set. Because there are places kind of like in Skyrim themselves that they don't necessarily agree with the Empire, but they don't like believe what the Stormcloaks are pushing.
They're neutral,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, they're kind of like, okay, well, we're just gonna continue to do our thing. We'll say we support the Empire. We're gonna do our thing, and you know what? Like, I can see that as being like an okay option, but then as things kind of continue to progress with the Empire basically saying like, this is how it's gonna be, and if you don't like it, then you're a traitor, which goes exactly with what you said at the very beginning of like Skyrim. You were at the wrong place at the wrong time, and they didn't want to hear anything about it. Tensions were high. They wanted Ulfric gone and done and dealt with, and they did not give you fair justice. Like, I don't know if normally they would execute horse thieves, or if there would just be some type of fine that Ralof? No, not
yeah, I know the guy you're talking about. If you go with the Nord player instead of the Imperial one.
No. The guy from Rorikstead at the very beginning, the horse thief that gets shot.
That guy, okay.
Yeah, so I don't know if they normally would have executed him, or if maybe they would have just been able to throw him in jail and everything. But because he was there at the time when they ambushed Ulfric and captured Ulfric, like they were just gonna execute everyone there. And it was like that's not how you govern. That's not how you do. Like, normal people in Skyrim see that and say, "Hey, why are you just coming in and executing people that, that seems like a big overreach. That doesn't seem like, the punishment fits the crime." Like, I can understand, like, when you get caught in Skyrim for gameplay, you can either pay the fine, go to jail, or fight. So I get that, but I'm sure that guy, and I wish I could remember his name, I'm sure that guy definitely would have rather have just gone to jail or paid a fine if he could have. And I know there's some background lore for him too. I can't remember any of it, but I'm almost positive I remember like reading some stuff around Skyrim, like maybe like a note here or whatever about like who he was and why he stole the horse or whatever his background was. I know I remember hearing something about it or reading something about it, but I don't remember what it was. But anyway, yeah, like the normal people of Skyrim definitely would have handled things, a little bit more delicately. They wouldn't have been like, we're going to execute all of you.
I mean, maybe. Like, I mean, I'm not sure what exactly the standard is in Skyrim, but I do know that horse thievery is a pretty serious crime. And back in the old West days, you could be hung for that, being a horse thief, because horses are valuable. Like, there's a lot of money in horses.
Yeah,
I think
you still would get an option, or at the very least, I'm saying that based off of gameplay. So at the very least, you have 3 options, and it seems like they didn't give options anymore. It was, this is how it's gonna be. We're gonna execute you because we don't want to run the risk that you might have been with the Stormcloaks, you might not have been. Like, there was no type of trial or anything like that. And honestly, like, yeah, it could have been like a trial, like combat or something like that. Like, nothing was done. It was literally like, we captured you. We aren't 100% sure if you had anything to do with this, but we know that you did something wrong and you were in the area, so you're tagging along and we're just going to execute you all. Like, we don't even know why the Dragonborn was there, what he was doing, or she, what they were doing when they got arrested. They were just at the wrong place at the wrong time, and now all of a sudden you're getting arrested. You could have been just in the area and not have committed any crime, not done anything wrong, and they were like, you're in the area, you're coming with us, and we're executing you because you seem suspicious.
Yeah, you were. The presumption is that you were trying to cross the border. The lore is left very vague on that as to what you were doing. Like, there's no real filler going into it. But and I agree with you that it sucks because it's just like you got caught up in some really bad shit. The point is that they want Ulfric and his men like executed as quick as possible. Like, I mean, the Thalmor are even there to try and prevent that shit from happening. Like, did you know that? Like, the as we pull up on Helgen, the Thalmor ambassador is talking with General Tullius, and you can hear them making an exchange. They're there to prevent it. There's even cut dialogue from the game where the ambassador is trying to save them. He's trying to be like, "Hey, no, I'm invoking like Thalmor law or whatever. These prisoners belong to me." Tullius is there because he's like, "Yeah, we're not doing this. Execute them right now. We're not going to give them the option to rescue Ulfric later. So all of these guys have to die." He's upping the ante. Do I think Tullius cares about you as an individual? No, I don't think he gives a shit. But he's very committed to his goal of being Ulfric is here. If we don't kill him now, it only increases the likelihood that the Thalmor are going to free him later. We need to make sure he dies here and that everyone knows about it. Get this rebellion over with right now.
Yeah, well,
I can't blame him for that because it's like he's a general. He knows that if this goes further and goes into open war, it's going to cost a lot more lives. I mean, think of all the shit that could have been avoided if Ulfric had died right there.
Yeah, well, like you said before, that's the Thalmor wanting them to continue fighting with each other. That's not any like big surprise. They want them to continue, both sides to continue fighting each other, so that way they can remass their troops and plan another like attack on Cyrodiil and into Skyrim and everything. Like, they want that like war to continue between the two sides. That's the only reason why they would want Ulfric to be released, or some of the like Stormcloaks and everything to be released, because at that point, like, Ulfric would become a martyr. So who's gonna rise up in his place and continue this war? Even if Ulfric died, yes, he's a strong warrior. He was like held in high regard until he basically said, that he wanted freedom, kind of like a William Wallace type thing, where he's like I want freedom for my people, and was basically shunned by the people he used to fight for. He thought the Empire had his back, and they didn't.
I can understand how upset he is by that. Like, I can only imagine what would go into feeling like you've been betrayed by your own government or your own people. I don't think that justifies his actions, though. Like, him trying to push for a war in Skyrim so they could be free of the Empire is the solution here. Like, I mean, again, like, I hate to repeat this, but it's an overarching thing that we can't deny. humanity as a whole is under threat, and the Empire is the big game in town to be like, no, humanity, fight back. Skyrim, I know he's against the Nords or whatever, or not, sorry, not against the Nords. He's against the Thalmor. Everyone's against the Thalmor. There's even dialogue. I'm pretty sure there's dialogue at one point where like they're sitting down at the negotiating table just before that treaty scene, like that quest where you sit at the Greybeard negotiating table, where they even say like, I object to the fact that like the Thalmor are here, like they have no business, yada yada, or whatever. And Tullius is like, yes, be surprised because I agree with you on that, but you know, these are the facts of life and we got to live with them.
Yeah, but see, that's one of the issues that I have with how the Empire handles it, though, is they are basically rolling over because it's convenient right now to go along with this treaty and everything to try and like build your army back up and everything. But if they just would have like gotten the help that they needed in the beginning, instead of, you know, thinking, oh, well, we're so awesome and amazing that we can handle this shit. Like, if everybody would have just grouped up together and taken this as, like, a united front. Like, I mean, they called Ulfric to come help fight in Cyrodiil. Like I said before, I mean, you know, they called some troops in to come help fight in Cyrodiil because I don't know for sure if it was because they were like just too cocky and thought that they could, you know, handle this, and then all of a sudden, oh, they can't handle this, so they ended up losing Cyrodiil. And I know there was a bunch of stuff too with, was it the Emperor's family, or it was some high political figure's family or whatever, was basically like being held hostage by the Thalmor, like, and that was one of the other things why Ulfric thought that like some of the leaders in Skyrim were puppets, because, you know, they couldn't necessarily be trusted because there were people in Cyrodiil that were being held hostage essentially and told like, you need to do what we say or we're gonna hurt your family. And they were like, okay, yep, I get it. Instead of trying to push back at all, they were like, yep, you're in charge, boss. Like, I'll do whatever you say. You want me to write these laws? You want me to, like, have this be the way things work? Okay, we'll do what you want. Just don't hurt my family.
Is there, like, proof that was that the Empire actually doing that? Like, is there actually, like, proof that the Empire is the one who's, like, threatening people's families in order to keep them compliant?
No, the Empire wasn't threatening the family. The Thalmor were threatening the families of, like, Empire political figures. I can't remember exactly who it was. I think part of it was I think they had like somebody in the Emperor's family like held hostage or something, and then
that wouldn't surprise me.
I think there were like others, like, and it wasn't like an open hostage situation. You know, it wasn't like do as we say because they're down in the dungeon. If you don't, we'll kill them. It was like, you don't know when this is gonna happen, so tread lightly. So it was a paranoia thing of like, oh my gosh, whatever I do or say has to be with them, or it might happen, you know. And it was like you see them like skulking in the hallways type of deal, you know. That's kind of how it was explained, was like, you know, it wasn't like an open hostage situation. So it was made to be believed that you know, these ideas were coming straight from like the Emperor or the you know, the like whoever else like had like the family's house.
Imperial leadership.
Yeah. So it was basically like, these ideas are theirs, like, trust us, like we're just here, you know. And it kind of really took a lot of trust away from the Empire. Like, and I get it. Nobody wants to see anything bad happen to their family, and they'll do whatever it takes. And sometimes you have to be like, okay, I get it. You know, when they say, drop the gun or I'll shoot, you know, and you're like, oh, that's my wife. Here, I'll put the gun on the floor. Like, don't shoot her, you know. Like, I get that. But there also has to be a time where you can say, enough is enough, and you have to push back. Or else It's just always going to be that way. If they can't eradicate you, they're going to control you politically, and you're just going to be one of their pawns.
I know that, yeah, the Thalmor. That's honestly the way the Thalmor play. They're not the stereotypical like, you know, military conquest type faction. Like they do use military forces, but a lot of their efforts are dedicated to subterfuge and, you know, getting the long win or the clever win. If there's a way to achieve victory, but through less like brutal force, that's typically what the Thalmor seem to go for. They go they captured the capital, but they mostly just sat in the capital while they were there. Excuse me. Their goal seemed to be like to demoralize and force a surrender for the Empire, rather than to just outright start a genocide or anything like that. But, you know, according to the lore, they were also getting up on rituals to further demoralize. Like they were trying to trigger the Deva while they were holding up in the capital, sacrificing civilians left there. And whether or not this was like their main plan or it was just something they decided to try all of a sudden on their own, it goes to show that they're going for more than just like, you know, a martial win. They're going for something a little more clever always. Like there's always some level of subterfuge going on. Like so it doesn't surprise me that they would, you know, try that kind of thing. But the Empire, you know, it hasn't been humbled by, or well, maybe humbled isn't the right word. It hasn't been broken by the Thalmor. The Empire is still preparing for like their war. Like they're like you talking with General Tullius at one point, he even tells you, or you're asking about like reinforcements. I think this is like the Greybeard conference. You ask him about like, hey, what are the odds of the Empire sending reinforcements into Skyrim, since it's just you and your legion right now, and we're pretty evenly matched. If the Empire were to send just one more legion, we could really tip the scales in our favor. And Tullius is just honest with you. He's like, yeah, I'm going to tell you right now that that's probably not going to happen. They dispatched me, they sent me my legion, and that's pretty much all we're getting for this. Because all the rest of the Imperial forces are lined up at the border with the Aldmeri Dominion, and they're just waiting. They don't want to appear weak by siphoning forces away from the border, so they need to keep their forces in place where they are. Because they know, long term, it's all going to lead to the next war. Like, there's no question about it. If you play as the Stormcloaks and you defeat Tullius, as Tullius is there, like on the ground, he's like, you know, this is exactly what they want, right? They want us fighting amongst each other and us being divided. And it just from that angle, and it's like he's right. All this is feeding into Thalmor victory. Maybe they think that in the long run they could manage to overcome the Thalmor anyway. But I don't believe that it's as possible, or it'd be a much longer shot. The Empire was hit hard enough when the Red Guards all decided to up and leave. When the rest of Hammerfell decided to take off, it's no good. It's not looking good for the Empire long term if more forces keep seceding because they're like, well, we don't like the way things are going. I mean, the treaty terms, even the way that they were enforced, kind of go into that, where they're not asking for just territory concessions. They're asking for specific stuff that they know is going to upset the most people in Skyrim. They asked for a large portion of Southern Hammerfell. That pissed off the Red Guard. They asked to ban Talos worship. They knew that would piss off the Nords. They also asked for the Blades to be disbanded. That eliminated their intelligence/special operations group that the Empire had, the ones that were specifically dedicated to fighting Thalmor. And it's all gearing up towards this. Like their goal with the treaty was they knew what the treaty was. It was just a brief secession in hostility. It was the lull in the storm until the next war starts. And they decided, okay, we're gonna play the long game again, because that's what they do. They're the Thalmor. It goes right in with everything they do. They picked the treaty stipulations that make it seem like the Empire is getting away with the most, but in reality, they're attempting to weaken them longer term. They want Skyrim to secede. They want Skyrim to be at odds with the Empire. They want the Empire to be weaker without the Blades or without the Red Guards. Yeah, they're playing the long game here, and we need to do everything we can to discourage that. And Imperial victory in Skyrim is the best option for humanity as a whole. We're not even talking about like mass executions of everyone if they lose or whatever. It's like no, we want the current rebellious power base to be deposed, and we want to have the good ones back. Like they're only ever really talking about executing the actual criminals, which goes with Ulfric. Ulfric is regarded as an actual criminal by the Empire for what he did.
Yeah,
Even
and
though
I don't agree with that either, though.
okay,
I don't see him as a criminal. I mean, he went and openly challenged the High King, which is in Nordic tradition and Nordic law, like that's acceptable. So Ulfric didn't break the law. Yes, he may have used I'm gonna say this excessive force against the High King.
Oh, excessive force. Huh? Okay.
But he definitely didn't he didn't cheat. He didn't basically go in and jump the guy. He challenged him, and that right there is okay by law. So Ulfric should never have been considered a criminal for that.
Okay.
Was it a shitty thing to do? Yeah. I mean, he had other options, but I understand his reasoning. I don't necessarily fully agree with it. But, he had his reasonings. He did it the fairest way. I mean, he was regarded as a great warrior for a reason.
Look, he used the power of the voice. It wasn't even exactly like a warrior thing he did. He used the voice to pull it. I use this metaphor a lot, and I still think it fits. He pulled a gun out in a knife fight, and he shot the other knife fighter.
Yup. He used what he had at his disposal.
And I admire that ideal a lot, like I really do. But at the same time, I kind of agree with Tullius and the Empire's reaction to it, which was you killed the High King. You did it for yourself. Like you murdered him. He'd never stood a chance against you, and you knew that. That's why you challenged him. You didn't challenge him to honorable combat of might makes right. I'm trying to think of a good way to phrase it. It's like you didn't challenge him to a fair and level match, and may the gods bless whoever wins. You challenged him to a match where you knew you held the clear advantage.
Okay, so if you were to challenge somebody, I understand the whole it should be honorable to even in old duels and everything here in the real world, it was choose your weapon. We will give you a pair of pistols and you guys march off and turn and shoot. So I understand the whole idea of this should be fair, but then you look at real life Nordic culture and everything, and a lot of it was okay, we're gonna give you your weapon of choice and we're gonna let you fight, nobody interrupt this, and that's basically all it was. There was a lot of quote unquote cheating, and you know what, the only fair fight that you can ever be a part of, let me say it this way, the only fair fight is the one you lose.
That I agree with the sentiment you're going for. I understand it, but at the same time, it's look, you can't just kill the king you don't like and take over. That's not how that works.
It's exactly how that works. That's the whole reason. That's the whole reason they have the challenging.
There's no clear law that says you can use the voice. Even other Nords were like, "Holy shit! He shouted him to death. Can he do that?
There's
can he
no
do that?"
clear law that says you can't, because it's a rare skill. I'll call it. It's a rare skill to be able to do, because people don't just go train with the Greybeards.
Well, there's no law that says I can't throw dollar bills over the New York Stock Exchange at noon, but there's a reason that you don't do that shit. There's a reason that there's a pane of glass there now, because some fucker did that, and they don't want anyone doing it ever again, because they never thought anyone would be stupid enough to do it.
Okay, well, basically, you going in and challenging somebody, you should know that your opponent is going to use everything that they can to win this challenge. And I think that's the way it should be. Maybe they were given the same weapons or whatever, and the one clear advantage is that Ulfric was a more seasoned veteran and had the skill of the voice. Like
the king definitely, the High King definitely made a bad choice agreeing to the duel in the first place. But the problem is that Ulfric had the right of challenge. He was a jarl. He had it is within his right to make that challenge.
Exactly. So how does that make him a criminal?
He had the right to make the challenge. It doesn't mean he had the right to go ahead and kill the High King in that way. And the fact of the matter is, it also comes down to even if he won the challenge, does it really come down to a might makes right sort of mentality? Like, I mean, are you the best, or is your way the right way just because you killed another guy first?
No, but he had the backing, he had the following that said, this is what we believe, and people were behind it to begin with before he went and did that. And then he wanted to solidify that. He wanted to solidify that he is strong enough to drive the Thalmor out. He's strong enough to lead the people of Skyrim, and showed that with saying, well, I'm going to take over, and we're going to do this, and we're going to free Skyrim from the tyranny of the Thalmor.
Okay. He had a backing among some of the people. Here's the thing. Originally, they had a King's Moot before. When the last High King died and before this one got put into power, they had a King's Moot where the Jarls all got together and they were going to decide which one of them was going to become the king.
Yes.
Ulfric was very open about the fact that he was against the Thalmor. He's like, I'm against that. I think Skyrim should be independent. He was openly pro independent Skyrim. He was not keeping that shit a secret. And even then, he didn't have a following that was strong enough to make himself the High King, which means he didn't have a majority of the lords on his side.
No, the reason that is because everybody recognized Torrig as the rightful successor because of blood and because people liked him. It didn't have anything to do with, they didn't like Ulfric, or they didn't like Ulfric enough. It was everybody knew that Torrig was next in line. Everybody was okay with Torrig being next in line until the issues started happening where the Empire bent the knee, and then Ulfric was like, are you going to do anything about this? And nothing was being done, and then he said, well then fuck it, I'm going to do something about this.
Yeah, but his way was, okay, I'm going to break the law and I'm going to cause more trouble. I mentioned it earlier. The reason that the Thalmor are allowed to basically put murder squads roaming the countryside into Skyrim is because he aided and abetted in an operation or in putting down a rebellion that gave them an excuse. He knew better. He absolutely knew better. And the only other argument you can make towards that is he didn't know better, in which case he's an idiot. Because he's a Jarl's son. He's a Jarl himself. He is exactly the kind of person who would have been educated to deal with these kinds of situations. He knew full well you can't just defy the orders of the land. Like, you can't just go against the law. It's like, this is the way it is.
If the law is unjust.
Okay, but you can't... But yeah, him going against the law that he thought was unjust led to other people dying. Like, a bunch of innocent people died as a result of him fighting the law his way, instead of fighting it in over a negotiating table or arguing against it. I mean, shit, he could have just ignored it. That's what most people were doing. Ignore the ban on worshipping Talos. Just walk around and be like, hey, you even said yourself, when you put on a Talos amulet, you walk around Skyrim. The other Nords aren't like, hey, you're breaking the law, cut that shit out. The guards aren't going to arrest you for wearing a Talos amulet. They're just like, hey, be careful. There are Thalmor wandering around, and if they see you with that, they might attack you.
Yeah,
he made the situation worse, even if it wasn't his intention. He made this shit worse.
I still feel that, like, being able to fight for what you believe in and doing it fair in your laws, I mean that doesn't necessarily make him a criminal.
No, and that goes into that goes into something else too. I agree. It's like, look, sometimes reasonable men are left with no reasonable recourse. Like their backs are against the wall and they have nothing else that they can do. And if Ulfric felt that way, like genuinely felt that way, I can't fault him for going the path he did.
The only thing that makes me think maybe he didn't fully feel that way is because he didn't sit down and have that talk with Torrig. I feel like that's the only thing that I can't necessarily forgive. I mean, well, there's that, and if he actually did all that shit with Markarth, but that is kind of like my main concern with, like, he didn't exhaust every option beforehand. I feel like that was the one thing that he still could have done, and if that failed, then I could justify the rest of it like 100%. But because I don't know if he actually like went and sat down and talked with Torrig and said, or at least brought it up to Torrig again, saying like, hey, they signed this, you know, how about we do things our way? Like, let's do this for Skyrim together. You know, I don't think he had that conversation. It could have been because he didn't believe that Torrig would have listened to him, but I don't know if he knew that Torrig held so much respect for him. I feel like if he knew that and they had that conversation, then maybe it could have been done a little bit differently. It could have played out almost exactly the same with the Empire, except Ulfric not being the enemy, the High King being the enemy. You know?
I think Ulfric's... I know what you mean. I think Ulfric's efforts would have been much better directed. If Rebellion was still his ultimate goal, I think his efforts would have been much better directed making up for the mistakes that he made. Like, again, he created a huge mess with giving the Thalmor a leg in Skyrim. They have the embassy, and they have the Justicars wandering around killing Talos worshippers, and they can get away with it. He would be better set trying to deal with that, like finding a way to get the Thalmor expelled from Skyrim again. Being like, hey, there might have been a treaty violation that brought them here, but these guys are absolutely abusing the shit out of the trust that they were granted then. Like, they made a stipulation that they wanted to be able to walk around Skyrim and, check for treaty violations. They're abusing it. So we need to, turn the tables, punish them, and get them kicked out of Skyrim at a minimum. And not to mention that doing so and protecting Talos worshippers would have gone a long way towards, restoring the good name of the people of Skyrim or his good name in their eyes. Because to be fair, he's a big part of that. Like, even if it wasn't his intention, it's like, Ulfric, you should know better, dude. And I'm not denying he's been handed a shit hand a lot of times in life. His father dying while he was in prison is bullshit. I have no doubt he suffered a lot in the war, but it doesn't give him an excuse to act this way. Like, suffering does not give you a license to just get away with bullshit.
No, but I mean, being tortured by the Thalmor and everything, like, this growing hate for basically just being human. He was looked down on by the Thalmor and everything. I mean, obviously all humans were, but he was looked down on, he was tortured, and he had enough. And then when he said, hey, what they're doing isn't right, and then the Empire going, we agree, but let's not do anything about it yet. That, I can see how that strikes a nerve, like, especially after Ulfric had done so much for the Empire, and just being told to sit down, shut up, we'll handle it. Like, I can see how that wouldn't sit right with him, and he would be like, no, we need to do this because I don't want this to continue for my people.
I understand that. I understand that Ulfric, like, he felt like he was being pushed up against the wall on this stuff, but it's, again, I feel like he should really know better, because I can't ignore the larger picture here. Like, we have full context for, like, or not, well, not full context. We have a much better context for the larger struggle at play here, where Ulfric seems just primarily concerned with Skyrim, his homeland. Which, fair enough, like, someone's got to care about, their home and their neighbors, but you can't just ignore the fact that there's this big overarching threat coming your way. You gotta think of the bigger picture here, Ulfric. Like,
Well,
murdering the king and then going to war with the Empire is not a solution.
no, but it was because the Empire wouldn't do anything, at least not right now. And I can't say that it would have been a year or two of them, like, trying to bring back their army and everything. Like, it could have been, 10 years, 15 years. Like, we don't know how long it would have went on. And for the Empire to basically say, like, oh, the timing's not right, and then not really, like, having any more of a plan, then we'll deal with it, just we can't right now. Like, if they would have said, like, give us a year's time, we will, build up an army, and we agree we will stand with you, or give us 5 years or whatever to grow and to rebuild, and, like, we can talk to Hammerfell and try and, like, work out, like, a better deal with them and everything. And maybe they would have sought independence afterwards. Like, Skyrim would have been wanting to be independent afterwards. Fine, whatever. That can be, like a later on down the thing, or down the road type of thing. But for them to just basically not give him anything and just say, like, not yet. That was not sitting right. He was like, well, I'm not gonna sit around and wait while my people are suffering.
I mean, again, to point it out, a lot of that suffering is also coming from the fact that he couldn't control himself.
Well, I'm talking about, like, beforehand. Like, you gotta think.
The treaty had been signed. They were at a state of, even if temporary, they were at a state of peace.
Yeah, but I still don't see it as full peace. I'm not convinced that the Thalmor didn't, like, continue to try and push and subjugate the people of Skyrim, like, before Ulfric stepped up like that. I feel like
they would have tried, definitely.
I feel like there were still things going on that we don't know about or didn't hear about, because it's not like just one day, they were like, oh, we're gonna come in and, fix this shit. Like, I feel like once that treaty was signed, things kind of kicked off, but I still feel like, like, during all that, like, leading up to it and everything, and then once the treaty was signed, before, like, the Civil War started and everything, like, I feel like that was kind of still happening around. Like, it wasn't fully, like, oh, well, everybody stop, no more, there's a treaty signed. I feel like there had to have been pockets still that were like, well, I mean, we're gonna capture and torture, Talos worshippers.
I understand that. And, like, there was no doubt that there were still bad actors, like, on both sides, who wanted to, get away with as much as they could. Like, there typically are in after a war. There's resentment that if people have the opportunity to take advantage of, they absolutely will. But I think that Ulfric is one of those people who was especially resentful, and he acted on it in a way that definitely was detrimental to everybody else. I understand that he thought that, I'm not saying he didn't do what he did because he thought it was right. Like, that, there is an argument to be made that he probably, like, he might have done all this because he was just a greedy bastard and he wanted to be the High King himself, yada yada. He wanted to be king of the independent Skyrim. Like, that, I've heard that argument, and that there is something to be made for it, but I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, because in my research I was like, I'm inclined to think that it wasn't for personal greed. but he was still motivated to act on his own experiences and his own beliefs, to the point where it's like, it doesn't matter what you intended, man. This is the result. Like, you've created this huge problem now.
Yeah, and again, I come back to saying, like, I think he definitely pushed for wanting to be the one in charge and make these decisions and lead his people, because of the fact that he had been fucked over and, like, was tired of dealing with that, and did not want to have the chance of something going wrong. Because if something were to go wrong, or if, like, there was an issue or whatever, at least at that point he'd have really no one to blame for, you know, his own failures besides himself. You know, like, he couldn't, like, say, well, I'm mad that my plans don't work out or whatever because, you know, the High King is in charge, and, you know, he can't put that blame on anybody else. If he's the one in charge making the decisions and truly believes that he can help his people, I mean, he's the one responsible at that point.
I get that.
Yeah, it's not like an outside power.
No, I understand that. Something I want to bring up, though, is also Ulfric's, like, the way he's behaving, also, like, his actions outside of the actual, like, politics of the Civil War and everything. I want to bring up, because, you know, we've seen how he is in war. How is he acting on domestic affairs? Like, how is he in peace? What kind of rule does Ulfric have on his own home turf? And to be honest, it's not great. One of the things that we haven't mentioned is that he's also very against non-human races.
I know where you're going with this too, and I got some stuff to say about that. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, it bears mentioning the fact that, you know, a lot of the time you'll hear him say stuff, or at least his followers say stuff like, you know, Skyrim is for Nords, like, you know, kick out the other races. You know, he's very much a proponent of, like, the old Nord way, where it's like only the Nord people matter. In his own city, we see that the Dark Elves are living in the Grey Quarter. It's said that they live there by choice, or insinuated about it, but you can actually talk to characters who live there, and you'll. There was one that I found out, Malthier Elenel or whatever. You talk to him, and he's like, "Yeah, I moved here because I thought this place would be a haven for my kind, like a place for my people to congregate, and you know, people have shared like and all that. Except, you know, they're relegated to a shitty part of the city, and they're more or less stuck there." And he regrets being stuck there. He's like, I wouldn't have come here if I'd known that I was just going to be relegated to a slum. You know, he's living in the shittiest part of the city or whatever, with all, like, you know, all the city directorates and all the city care and planning goes towards where the Nords live in the city.
So,
and, you know, go ahead.
So, I want to say that the High King, I think it was before Torrig. It could have been after. I don't know the exact timeline. All I know is when the Red Mountain, I think is what it was. I had that part of my notes here. Yeah, the Red Mountain. So when the Red Mountain, like, exploded and everything, and the Dark Elves could no longer live in, like, their home.
That's the volcano, right? Like that huge volcano.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's quite a bit of history with that too. But when the Red Mountain exploded and the people could no longer live there, the High King of Skyrim actually gave them land and refugees homes, and, like, took care of them, even though a lot of the Nords and other races, like the Argonians, did not like the Dunmer. The problem with, like, the Dark Elves or the Dunmer is they basically had, like, a couple different sides of how they behaved. Like, there were what were they called? have it in here somewhere. Sorry. Anyway, it was. Yeah, I'm not seeing it right now. Hold on. So anyway,
it's fine.
Anyway, yeah, they had like a group that were like Daedra worshippers who. The reason that they became Dark Elves is because they went against like the other gods. Like they were punished and were given like the like ashen skin and the red eyes because I don't know if heretic would be the right word, but they went against like the other gods and worshipped like these Daedra. And
state, I think, is a term that works.
Yeah, so they basically kind of brought that upon themselves at the beginning, when they started like going against the other gods and everything, and became very like known as like these terrible people, because of like the acts that they committed. The Argonians tried to invade them when they tried to go back and everything, and they had to like fight off the Argonians. The the High Elves were like the main race of the Dominions, along with like the Wood Elves, or the Dominion, along with the Wood Elves and the Khajiit and everything. So that's kind of like another reason why like you see that Nords might not like elves, because that right there is problems with 3 races of elves: the High Elves, the Wood Elves, and the Dark Elves. Like they have a long history with the Dark Elves, and I mean we can get into that too. But like the Khajiit were part of the Dominion, the Wood Elves, and the High Elves, and they're all like right now being forced out of their own religion by the Dominion. But a little bit of like history on the Dunmar is they basically killed, like, their god basically killed the god of humans, like the god of humanity, Lorcan, which Lorcan kind of was a little bit of a trickster-esque, is how he's portrayed with like the other races and everything. But he's said to have built Nirn. He created Nirn, which is like the mortal plane, and he created man. And the Nordic representation of Lorcan is Shor. So I mean it's kind of one and the same. So if I use Lorcan or if I say Shor, know that they're the same person. It's just the Nords call Lorcan Shor.
Okay.
So after like Shor created Nirn, he was also like the embodiment of the afterlife of like Sovngarde. So not only was he like their creator and everything, he created like heaven and all that for the Nords, and the gods of the Dark Elves, like, or I think it was just one god. I can't remember exactly, but like the elven gods killed Shor and sent his heart down to Nirn, which became the Red Mountain. And then the elves, they did a lot of digging and everything and found like the heart, and they wanted to abuse the heart. And when they abused the heart is when they became the Dunmar, when they became the Dark Elves. So
it's the overarching effect of screwing with the gods, which in the Elder Scrolls universe tends to have somewhat immediate consequences because the gods are fairly active about that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I mean, when they were told like, hey, don't fuck with that, and they were like, no, we're gonna fuck with this. They were like, okay, now you're gonna be punished, and everyone's gonna know you as like these, I guess, traitors or whatever. Like, you know, people are gonna recognize that you guys fucked up, which is why we're going to turn you into now the Dark Elves, the Dunmar. And later on down the line, there was a king, King Wolfhearth, who was said to be like resurrected as Shor's avatar. So the Nords had their god killed by the elven gods, and now here comes the new embodiment of their god. And he was like, let's go reclaim my heart so I can be like back at full strength. I can be back, you know, and be the god for humanity. So that, you know, they kind of like amassed like an army and everything. And that wasn't just Nords. There was Nords and Orcs, and even one of the houses of Dark Elves. I don't know if actually they were Dark Elves, but it was House Dagoth, which I believe is at the very least a house of elves. So it wasn't like completely against elves. Like there were, I mean, I could be getting that wrong. I don't know for sure much about House Dagoth. I didn't go too much into that. But so they amassed an army to go reclaim the heart of their savior, basically. And he held on to they reclaimed the heart. He held on to it for a little while, and then he ended up getting attacked, King Wolfhearth. He was later killed by one of the like war heroes slash I don't know exactly what you would. Yeah, he's basically like a war hero and kind of like a high like religious figure, I think, of the Dwemer and the Chimer, which I believe were like another like race or whatever of like elves, kind of like a predating.
So what I'm getting so far is that like the Dark Elves are hated, but for good reason.
Yeah, like so they're pretty terrible people, but so real quick, I'll kind of finish up this point. Like he was killed, like King Wolfhearth was killed by this guy and his companions, and the Nords were like, well, hey, like you killed him once, we got his heart back, and now you killed him again. Like you killed Jesus twice. well, first you killed God, then you killed Jesus. Like that kind of like really pissed them off, you know. And then now they're saying, oh, by the way, you also can't like Talos. So it kind of like drew a lot of hatred towards elves as a whole, whether that was high elves, dark elves, you know, wood elves, whatever. Like that's one of the big reasons why they weren't like a big fan of elves. Not everybody hated them, but there was that little bit of disdain there.
I can understand the resentment. Okay, like from what I'm getting from that, I understand the resentment. But my thing about that is that like they don't represent like some huge like alternate faction. These are people who live in your city, who pay taxes and shop in your stores and shit, and you know they're under your care. They're your subjects.
Yeah,
you're still obligated to treat them well.
And they, at the like beginning of this, they were brought in as refugees. Like, you know, they were given land by the High King. They were told like, you guys don't have a home, so like we're gonna help you. And even though there was that long history of like kind of hatred for each other, you know, they were still given like a home. So I think it kind of just comes down to a little bit of ignorance of some of the followers who are probably a little bit too religious and still kind of hold on to that past and don't agree with, like, being forgiving towards them. And I agree, it's a little fucked up, but I also I still can kind of understand, like, in basically a religious war, why the two sides will kind of forever hate each other.
I can get that, but again, what I'm getting at when I'm mentioning it though is that Ulfric like shows that he's he's not able to put aside personal feelings. Like he even mentions at one point how his father had like softer policies towards like the Argonians and the Dark Elves and shit like that. How he's like, yeah, my father was soft on them, but I'm not. And clearly the people are pretty upset by like. So I can understand that maybe they would have been lured in by like his father's like well, I may not like you, but I'm okay with you guys living here. I'll look after you. But when Ulfric took over, it was much less. There was much less of a draw. Which, like I said, there was that character who you talk to who's like, if I'd known how bad this place actually was, I wouldn't have. I probably wouldn't have moved here. I thought I was moving into an area that would accept me and my kind, but in actuality, it's not that great. Like the Jarl never cares about the Grey Quarter or whatever. He just doesn't give a shit. It also comes down to the Argonians being banned from living inside the city, which I know some people might argue, well, maybe they like it out there. And, I'm not going to get into the weird biology of reptiles being happier living in the cold than living behind in the warm. But I will mention that it's if it was such a big deal, or if it wasn't a big deal, why is there a law that specifically says the Argonians can't live inside the city? Like even if they preferred living on outside the walls, why is there a law that says they can't live in the city if they want to? It's because they're not wanted there.
Yeah, see, I didn't dive too much into the Argonians. That's one of the things that I kind of like neglected in my notes a little bit.
So just like Ulfric, you don't like the Argonians, is what I'm hearing.
I like the Argonians, but I also understand that, like, and this is gonna sound bad, but I can kind of back it up a little bit. I really don't think the Argonians should be in Skyrim because of their biological makeup. Like,
there it is, folks. The racism comes through.
the Argonians are reptilian. They're cold-blooded creatures. Like, they should not be living in Skyrim. Skyrim doesn't have like very many like warm places for Argonians to live. If you look at where Argonians come from, like, Skyrim is not a very suitable like place
no,
for
I
them
get
to
you.
be at all. So
they come from marshlands. It's like it's they're like they jumped out of the bayou and suddenly now they're in the far north, and it's weird. I agree. The biology, I think maybe the game devs weren't really thinking about it, or maybe Argonians just don't have biology like typical reptiles. I mean, for some reason the women have breasts. Don't ask me why reptiles have breasts, but they do. I don't know. Maybe it's just bad writing, or maybe they wanted it in there for like the diversity of character options or something. But I don't know. Like it is weird. I will agree with you on that. It is weird that the Argonians inhabit Skyrim.
yeah, and so I think that might kind of play into a little bit as to why, like, they maybe they don't have very many interactions with Argonians until, like, more recently in history. Like, it could be, I don't know when Argonians came to Skyrim. I don't know how long, like, they've been there. I don't know how much interaction Nords have had with Argonians. So it still could be like a pretty like new relationship. Like, maybe it's only been the past like 100 years or whatever. Like,
It is, yeah. All this stuff takes place on the same continent, more or less, which it makes it seem like it's sooner or later, like you might see someone of a different race. Like it shouldn't be that surprising. Like if one day, like I don't know, like an elf walked through your village, or an orc walked through your village, you might be like, oh, I know what that is, even if I haven't seen one before, because I live in a world where these kinds of people walk around. Like you're at least peripherally aware of them.
yeah, so I mean, they might not have like too much interaction, and that's not saying that's an excuse for like mistreating them. Um, but I don't know exactly how like their relationship is. Like when I did a deep dive into like the elven history with the Nords and like kind of how that played out, it did shed some light on some things that I didn't quite know. Like so there could very well be like a deeper reason as to why they don't like Argonians. Um,
Like I like just real quick, like also mentioning like you mentioning like the history of the Dark Elves and stuff like that, and talking about them. Like I'm not the biggest into Skyrim lore. Like again, I had to do research to make sure I was getting all my points right on this. Just to make sure that I wasn't missing some huge piece of critical information. Also, like I said earlier, context matters. It helps to know like where everyone is standing on these things. But yeah, no, I was looking through it, and I appreciate you mentioning it like that because it definitely did put things into a light for me. So maybe there is like some bit of lore that just hasn't been established as to why, or maybe it's not just readily available as to why the Argonians are forced out of the city or something. But at the same time, it's not exactly a feather in Ulfric's cap that he kicks out all the people that aren't Nords, or he relegates them into an area where he doesn't have to look at them.
Yeah, well, see, I don't think it's a Nord versus everyone else thing. I think it's a human versus, like, the other races thing. I think
No,
it's.
the Empire is pretty egalitarian about that. They're pretty diverse and open. They've got like
Yeah.
most of the races involved to one level or another.
Yeah, but I don't think I don't think the Stormcloaks, or at least, like, kind of like Nords in general, have like a true disdain for like anyone who's not Nord. I think it just has to do with like they see uh like man as like the humans, which would be like the Bretons, the Imperials, the Nords, the Red Guards. Like it, I think they see like the more like bestial races and um, like the elves and everything. I think they have their reasons for not liking them. Um,
They
I
to
don't
be
think they really hate orcs either. I don't think they have like a fondness for orcs, but I think they get along better with orcs than elves.
I don't know. The orcs seem like generally looked down upon by people. Again, I'm not the biggest Skyrim or Elder Scrolls lore master, but I don't know. Orcs do seem somewhat looked down upon by a lot of people. Like you get acceptance to some degree, but like people will look sideways at an orc walking around.
Yeah, but
Um,
I think that has to do with the nature of orcs themselves.
right.
I
Part of that does play into like the stereotypes, which they might be stereotypes, but like the orcs do act a certain way usually.
Yeah, they might be a little bit more rough around the edges, a little bit harder to get along with. But I don't
Yeah.
think there's any type of like, as far as I've seen, and I like even doing some of the research and everything. I didn't go too far into it. I just kind of looked at like the elven side. Why they don't like the elves so much? But I mean, even during that, like when they went to go get back Wolfhearth's heart, like the Nords and orcs like fought together on this. So I kind of have a feeling that maybe the orcs are like they could have been created again by Shore. Um, I like again I don't fully know like the whole deal behind that. I kind of have a feeling that it had something to do with Daedra, but I'm not 100% sure. I feel like I remember hearing something about that. So it could even be that they were not even part of, like that same religion. They could have been, Daedra created and worshipped Daedra. I don't remember. I kind of remember a little bit of something about like orcs and Daedra, but again,
Yeah,
I'd have to
there's
look up
some weird
stuff.
relationship they have to it. I think they might have been like influenced by in their early evolution or something like that. A lot of it's like deep magic lore diving stuff, and a lot of it's also irrelevant to the game itself and stuff like that. I mean, something else I wanted to bring up because I noticed we're going to be coming up on our time in a little bit here. I wanted to bring up something I found on a Reddit AMA with Michael Kirkbride, who was talking about this just adds into like my point that like the Thalmor are a serious existential threat and that they need to be taken seriously before all else. Like before humans fight other humans and argue about, you know, whether or not they should get more of this or more of that, like it should be considered from another angle. And this is a excuse me, this is a quote he left on the page. It was in regards to the Thalmor are easily the most dangerous organization in the Arbus, more so than Talos. They cannot be understood. They are the other, and they hate everything that smells like mortality, and they're going to win in the end. Which is just, first off, ominous as shit. From what I understand, he doesn't write for the lore anymore. This was, I think this post actually might have been made after he had already left the company. But he was being asked about like what his opinion was, and he goes ahead and he gives that. And that last line definitely sounds like it was opinion. Like, you know, the Thalmor are going to win, you know, because, you know, they're just the faction he favors, or he's like they've got more going for them. But, you know, I think he hit the nail on the head where he's like, you know, they are the existential threat. They are the other. They're the ones who, you know, who come down, and they're going to be the end of us all unless we unite and stand against them.
Yeah.
And I think that we like, I know I sound like a broken record, but it's like, guys, the White Walkers are coming and no one's doing anything about it. Like, come on.
Well, I think too is because like elves live for a lot longer. They plan for further ahead. Like you said, you know, they go for long-term like scheming and everything. So, you know, the shortened lifespan of man, like you kind of gotta deal with the situation now. You can't wait and hold out and hope that the next generation can deal with these things, you know. So that's one of the reasons why I believe that like Ulfric is right in a sense. Like he should be, you know, saying that we need to take them out now, because what's going to happen to the children? Like, what's going to happen to the next generation that comes up and has to deal with them? Because I can't remember the name of the continent or the great city of High Elves, but like there's
the Summer Isles.
Yeah, well, there's the Summer Isles, and then I can't remember the name of like their big shining city, which is one of the big reasons why the Thalmor want to like eradicate, you know, humanity, is because they want to kind of keep advancing their city, making it better and like bigger and more glorious, which is another reason why they suggested the Concord and everything. Like they wanted to improve their city, and they thought, okay, well, we're going to continue to build up our city and keep making it better because we have the time to do so. So we can have this Concord go on for as long as we want, and we know that eventually humanity is going to either end up folding, either collapsing in on itself, or we are just going to outpace them. So they were okay with it being like, you know, decades or centuries of this quote-unquote peace, because they would continue to be getting their way anyway and advancing because they had the time to.
It's probably never going to advance to that point though, because, you know, like Tullius and like everyone's saying, it's like, hey, this is only temporary. Like within our lifetimes, the next war is going to kick off.
Well,
like it's on the horizon.
That's the way that they see it. You know, like the elves can just kind of continue to get like better faster in the meantime, because they have more, I don't want to say supply or ability to, but like they can continue to advance and kind of keep taking things over and do it bit by bit and try and outlast humanity.
A big thing, I mean, we'll see how that goes for them. A big thing that humanity's got going for themselves, especially by the end of the game, is, you know, the Dragonborn is back. Like, you know, like regardless of what form that character takes, based on what the player made them, the Dragonborn has returned, and over the fact that over the fact that the Dragonborn have shown up again. Like, there's no. Sorry, what?
I would say I think you cut out a little bit when you said like the Dragonborn came back and returned. Like, I think you cut out like right after that.
Oh, I apologize. Then, for the sake of the recording, I'll go ahead and I'll put in. It's like when the Dragonborn came back, like the Thalmor should be shitting themselves. Like, whatever form the Dragonborn takes, the fact that they're back is a huge game changer.
Yeah.
Like the outlook. Like, if honestly, it would not surprise me if by the time the next game comes out, they say that, hey, yeah, the Dragonborn, rose to become the new emperor or whatever, like, or the emperor abdicated his seat of power for the Dragonborn and led them in the war, or the Dragonborn is going to lead them in the war. Like, they'll do, I don't know, maybe they'll do like some sort of like, hey, do you know what the emperor looks like? I think they're Argonian. Yeah, that's right, the emperor's Argonian. Oh god, that'd be freaking hilarious. Can you imagine if an Argonian became the emperor?
I mean, it'd be different.
That would be different. That'd be an interesting dialogue choice to be like, wow, yeah, that Argonian emperor. We all serve the Khajiit, who, oh my god, anytime the king gives us, can you imagine a Khajiit giving a speech to like a big crowd of humans?
I did not steal that skooma. I wasn't gonna go with that joke. I wanted to, you know. But basically, that tone of voice, you know, it's like, I did not do this.
Khajiit has empire if you have soldiers. God. Yeah, look at me. I made the racism comment earlier. Now I'm the one being racist. Jesus.
I really like the Khajiit. I do. And I like the Argonians.
Their culture is cool, and I do like the idea of the Argonians as a species also. They're very cool.
Yeah, and it's cool to kind of like have fun and explore, like playing the different characters and everything, and kind of seeing how the world reacts to you, because everybody kind of treats you a little bit differently depending on like who you decide to play as. And I think that's very interesting that it's not just like,
yes,
oh, you're the Dragonborn, and like they actually see you for kind of who you are, and there's like a more like a deeper dynamic to it all than just kind of like the surface level of like, this is your title, this is who you are, you're the Dragonborn, and like that's what people see you as. It's like there's more like a deeper interaction between you and everyone else in the world, depending on which race you pick.
Right. And that's honestly, that's really cool to me too. Like, I know we've gotten a little away from the topic, but it is very interesting to me how like your race does affect how certain interactions go. Something I uncovered when I was watching lore videos and talking about stuff or online, or finding conversations that people have had in the past, was they were mentioning how like for the embassy mission, for example, like this is never mentioned, but if you disguise yourself as a Thalmor, like if you put on like the robes and you walk around, enemies will aggro to you in a different way based on how they see you in those robes. I think that there's like a set area where it's like if you get too close, they'll turn on you because they'll realize you're not one of them. If you're like a human or like a red guard or something. But if you're a high elf and you put on the robes, you have the option of just walking around and being like, "Of course I'm one of you. How could you think otherwise?" Yeah. And you have the option of like talking your way. Like there's a little courtyard area I remember where I had to fight my way through because I actually played as a Nord character on my last couple playthroughs.
Yep.
I like the aesthetic. But I remember I had to fight my way through the courtyard. But apparently, if you play as a high elf and you just walk through, you can walk right up to the guy standing guard in front of the office, and just be like, "Hey, they need you inside." "Oh, why didn't you say so? Stand guard here for me while I leave." And then he just leaves, and you can just walk right inside. And it's like, wow, that's they never say that, but it's like one of those things that it makes me curious. Like, I wonder what other things, like, I wonder if you could join the Stormcloaks as a high elf. I mean, it seems like it'd be a huge lore break if you could. But,
for gameplay purposes, obviously, you got to be able to, you got to make it fair and experience everything the same. I don't want to say necessarily the same way, but like you experience everything like gameplay wise, like
right,
I don't think they would like gatekeep you from like quests just because of like which like race you end up picking and everything. But
right, Bethesda did a good job on that front, I think, in a lot of ways, where it's like they try not to deny you gameplay based on choices you make, unless it's like big choices. Like what faction you go for. Obviously, you're not going to experience the other faction story if you chose a faction already. But it's like if you chose like a certain race or whatever, it'll change the sort of reactions you get. Like I know that if you play as a Khajiit, you get better interactions with the traveling caravans going around Skyrim.
Yeah, I mean, they all have like kind of their ups and downs for certain things, and they all have their own like actual like special abilities. Like Argonians can breathe underwater. Nords are more like resistant to frost damage and everything, and certain races are better with magic and all that.
Yeah, it seems like the breathe underwater thing would come into play more often than it does, but it's like unfortunately in Skyrim it's borderline useless, which I think is why not a lot of people play as Argonians, because they're special. Like, first off, not a lot of people like the aesthetic. Second off, it's like, when are you ever going to need to breathe underwater?
Yeah, I mean, when I played Oblivion, like I did end up making an Argonian character at one point, and to go back to your other point too, whenever like I played, like, well, I guess I only really played the two. When I got into like Oblivion and everything, I was like, okay, I'm gonna play as an Imperial because that's like the like majority race here in this game. And then when I played Skyrim, I played as a Nord. Like those were my first like playthroughs for each one. I chose the one that fit that that region, So
no, it's understandable, and not to mention, like, people make fun of people who pick humans as characters. Like, I've had people make fun of me for picking a basic human character for games or whatever, and it's like, yeah, they're like the bog standard. It's like, you can appreciate a lot as a human. Like, I honestly, I think it's perfectly normal to just you as a human picking a human character, like imposing yourself into the world as this faction or whatever. Like it maybe if you're feeling exotic, you'll pick an Argonian, or like, I mean, I picked an Argonian. I still remember it. I named him Reptar, and I was just like, yeah, Legend of Reptar, the Dragonborn, let's go, and had a good time with it. One time I picked Khajiit. I didn't go far with that playthrough, but I still remember thinking, okay, cool, picking up my my cat person fighter or whatever. So just, I understand branching out, but like, it seems more natural to just pick like the bog standard and start there. Plus, I don't know. I personally, I can't imagine how weird it would be going into the game for the first time and picking this exotic race you've never experienced before, and then just encountering something specific to that. I would have been really weirded out by everyone's reaction to a Khajiit walking around as a Dragonborn if I didn't learn first as a human why everyone acts weird around the Khajiit. It's like, oh yeah, they're gypsy people. They walk around, or Romani, or whatever the term is for it. They go around these trade caravans, and they're known for certain stereotypes, or like for stuff, or certain habits or whatever. And there's memes about it. Like, oh, Khajiit's coin, or Khajiit's skooma if you have coin. Stuff like that.
Yeah, I didn't steal anything.
Then yeah, God, just you saying that reminds me of those like Skyrim cops and Skyrim scribbles and stuff like that too. But yeah, no, like the lore, a lot of the lore I know is based around Skyrim too, which adds into it, because Skyrim I think was like my big I was aware of Elder Scrolls, but Skyrim was everyone's big exposure to the lore of the universe.
Yeah, I started with Oblivion, which I didn't even know Elder Scrolls existed. Like when this happened, I got bored with like some video games that I had, and I was like, I need a new experience. I kind of want to play like a game that's got tons of gameplay, something that's kind of open world, and I really enjoy like the fantasy genre. So I went into GameStop and I explained that to the guy, and he's like, oh boy, do I got the game for you, and walks over, picks Oblivion off the shelf, and it's like the full like Game of the Year edition or whatever, and he's like this right here. He's like, it's got so much gameplay, you're gonna love it, like, and I was like, all right, I guess I'll try it. I was kind of looking at it and I'm like, it doesn't look that great, but I fell in love with that game. And a buddy of mine, actually, he started playing it, I think, around the same time I did, and I don't remember if I introduced him to it or if he just like found it on his own as well. But like I used to go over there and we sat there just playing Oblivion on his Xbox, and I would go home and play Oblivion on my PlayStation, and like it was a lot of fun. And then when Skyrim was announced, and as you can kind of tell by my whole aesthetic, like I love like the Viking style of stuff, you know, and I love like fantasy with dragons and everything, and I was just like, which, don't get me started, we can talk about this another time, those aren't dragons.
Yeah, no, it's long and short of the debate, folks. It's a whole rant Mimir will likely treat you with later, but yeah, they're wyverns because they have like their wings are attached to their forearms.
Yeah, so
their forelegs.
But yeah, so it was such a cool thing when I heard about Skyrim coming out, you know, and Skyrim has such like a rich history. Like there's a lot to like experience in the game. There's a lot of lore behind everything. There's a lot of lore behind all of the Elder Scrolls series. So much that we haven't really dove into much of it here, but I kind of get the feeling that we'll be revisiting this like probably a few times, talking about other things along with, you know, like different lore, not just the whole Stormcloak versus Imperial thing. But I guess we should probably do some closing remarks here. We've gone a little bit over 2 hours, so we can probably start wrapping it up, get some closing remarks in here.
Sure. Yeah, no, like just to finish off with what you said, like I also am a huge fan of the game. I love the fact that it's so detailed, like not even diving into the modding community, which if you've ever done that, good God, there is so much extra content. Like it double the game's playtime in just mods, at least, and it gets insane. But the versatility of the game, like the play length or whatever, like you said, you can go and just wander off into the wild and have an adventure, and it doesn't even matter. Like Skyrim players will, people will even tell you about like, oh yeah, I just left Whiterun and wandered off in a random direction. Next thing you know, I'm on this quest. I had no idea what was going on, but it was so much fun. Like it's a hallmark of the game. I mean, it's like there's a reason that they keep re-releasing Skyrim, and it's the fact that people keep paying full price for the game again and again.
I'm guilty of that.
I've done it twice. I have bought Skyrim. Originally, I had it for the Xbox 360, and then I bought it for PC. And I'm honestly considering buying it again. I considered buying it for my the VR version for PC also, because I've seen some people have some real fun with that, especially once they mod it to the point where it's like it's true VR. Because the initial VR release for it was it's like it. You had to still open menus to interact with stuff, but it's the mod that they add to it is like, no, you can actually just reach over and pick something up. Like you don't have to, you know, select anymore or point at something and hit select.
Yeah, I have that.
Very impressive.
I've bought it 5 times. I've bought Skyrim.
I can't even blame you.
Yep. But you know, I guess the only thing really I have to say is that like I do believe that Skyrim should be free to govern themselves after everything they've been through. I believe that Skyrim deserves the chance to like be independent from any other influence. Dealing with the war, Nords feel, you know, they shouldn't just roll over anymore for like the Empire or the Dominion to decide like what's best for them. I feel like they deserve the chance to pass or fail on their own. They're proud people, and they deserve to at least be given a chance.
I hear that, and I respect it, and I do 100% agree with that sentiment that sometimes people need to be allowed to succeed or fail on their own terms. But also, I'm just gonna and I will also even concede that you know you do have some point where it's like it's natural for the people of Skyrim to feel like they've been betrayed by the Empire, that there is some cause for resentment in there. But I'm also of the opinion that the Stormcloak Rebellion is very short-sighted overall. That's just my opinion. I know it's maybe not the most popular one, but
actually, I think your opinion is the most popular one.
Oh, okay. Because I encountered a lot.
I was say doing a lot of my research. A lot of people sided with Imperials.
I gotta wonder if that's a trick of the algorithm, because I was looking into the lore too, and I encountered a lot of people who were very pro Stormcloak, or a lot of pro Stormcloak material, and I was just like, wow, I guess I didn't know the Empire was the marginal faction. I thought they would be more popular than that.
Huh.
You're telling me that you were doing the research and it seemed the opposite to you?
Oh yeah, I was looking up stuff as to like, just kind of like looking up neutral. I wasn't looking up like, why are the Stormcloaks right? You know, like it wasn't like things like that. It was like I was looking up like debates between the two, and every debate I could kind of find was like mostly sided with Imperials. At least for a lot of the reasons that you say is that, you know, they're thinking more long term.
I found it like fairly split at some points, but a lot of stuff I found. I mean, the debate, at least as far as I saw it, was fairly split even. I had to actually do a couple different searches just to get a feel for it, but it seemed fairly even, or maybe just slightly leaning towards Stormcloak. Like I started to wonder if it's like, damn, did I really pick the faction that's that's the least popular? I can't believe that the Roman knockoffs are the underdogs here. Like, come on, guys! Like,
well. Anything else? I got a couple things I can say at the end here, but
well, real quick, I just want to put out that even though we have a disagreement in opinion, this is still a very fun topic. I don't at all begrudge you for picking Stormcloaks. And matter of fact, I'll probably do a Stormcloak playthrough. I have done in the past. I'll probably do it again at some point in the future, because Lord knows every time Skyrim is re-released, I'm thinking about doing another playthrough. Just, you know, got to get a mod list put together.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of fun with the discussion, and I think that it's a great recurring thing for people to talk about. Like, you know, there's no resentment here. It's just like, you know, who do you prefer? And it's a fun thing to talk about, like talking about your favorite sports team, but you know, somehow less resentment involved.
Yeah. Well, let us know down in the comments if, because this is going to be up on YouTube as well. Let us know down in the comments if you've played Skyrim, and which side did you pick? Like, you know, give some reasons why. Like, you know, maybe you felt one side was right over the other, one side was more fun, one side was more convenient. You know, just kind of give us your ideas as to why you picked that side. We also stream this live on Twitch. Obviously, those of you who are here right now, you can see. We don't have like a persistent schedule yet. We're still kind of like feeling it out with our work schedules and things like that when it's most convenient. We got our merch store. You can check that out. Like we said at the beginning of this, I actually just got one of our hats. It's super comfortable. So I recommend, like, if you feel like checking anything out in the merch store, it's a good way to support us. We do split it 50-50. To be fair, we're going to be coming up with some more designs for the store here soon. Lennex has his logo that we're going to be adding to some items and everything. Like I have my Mimir logo on things, and some stuff will have like combined logos or the like normal Modular Nerds logo. I think that's pretty much it. Just make sure to like, subscribe, follow if you haven't. I'm not going to be the type of guy who will tell you to, you know, hit the notification bell. Because that's annoying. Nobody wants all those notifications.
Yeah, honestly, it amazes me that that's even a feature, because it's like, do you have any idea how many times my phone would be going off if I hit the notification bell for every single subscriber I had?
Yeah. So, alrighty, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed this friendly little debate, and you guys have a good one.